let's take a look at the All-Pro Shade Concepts push for the playoffs/play-in. Taking a look at where the Suns stand. They're still in that 11 seed behind the Mavericks at 10, Blazers behind them at 12. Then going up, it's Kings, Clippers, Wolves, Warriors, Rockets, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Lakers, Thunder. And as great as that graphic is, really the most important thing today is the number of games back the Suns are. This game gave them a whole game up in the standings, closing in on the Mavericks. They are now just 1.5 games behind that coveted 10 seed. My dad in the chat wants all of us to put a percentage, a number on it. What do we think is the odds that the Phoenix Suns make the play-in? Gerald?
I know last time we talked I was very, very low, and that's because the Mavs were still healthy at that point. With Kyrie going down, I got to put it somewhere greater than 50%. I think they have a chance at this. I'm going to say 55% because they do still have a very tough schedule. But like you said, only a game and a half back of Dallas and only 4 games back of Sacramento. And you have 2 remaining games against Sacramento. So if you take care of business in those 2 games, suddenly you cut that in half and you're only 2 games back. So I would go 55 on this. Steven, what about you?
I'm at like 65%.
Okay.
I was at 40, I think, when everybody else was single digits.
Yeah.
So I took a nice little sizable uptick on that with the news that's transpired since then. I think they get it done. But my point, I just want to see them process their way into it, not walk backwards into it.
Not Dallas bow out of
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you there. I think it's going to be a combination of both. At least I hope
might
it's a
be.
combination of both,
honestly.
but not one over the other. But they're very much alive, especially with a win today, and that's the most important thing. As much as we're going to nitpick this team's performances and processes, as long as they can start to stack some wins together, they have a good chance of having a better record than Dallas.
I have a question for y'all. In addition to the play-in,
What's that?
what percentage would you give them of winning the play-in and just getting an all-out top 8?
That
going
one's
into
much
the
lower
playoffs.
for me. So, okay, well, it depends, though, because if the Clippers stay there, the Suns have had no trouble with the Clippers. No matter what stage of the season they've been in, they're 4-0 against the Clippers. We've seen them come back.
I'm about to say, remember when they were 3-0 against Minnesota last year in the regular season?
That's true, but this is a do-or-die game, and the Clippers don't scare me the way that the Timberwolves did. Like, the Clippers are not as good of a team as Minnesota was last year. I would probably, of securing a top 8 playoff spot, they would have to win 2 games. So for me, I'm probably going to say like 10% again.
Yeah, I would say 15% they get the 8th seed. I'll sit at a solid even 50 that they get into the play-in, but obviously that could go up. Some of you guys in the chat, Juju says 70, Kev says 10, B says 56%, Michael says 70%, Lucas says 50, Joe says 5%, Swag is at 40, that dude says 25%, that were too optimistic. Kev says if they make it to the play-in, he gives them a 40% chance to win the play-in. Lucas says 25% to win the first round. That would be a miracle. Portland is 2 games behind Phoenix in the 11th seed. They have a pretty interesting schedule coming up. They play Detroit tonight. Then they take on Golden State, who's been playing well as of late. New York, who is always dangerous, even though they've hit a little bit of a slide. Toronto, who we've seen what happens when you can play Toronto. Washington, those are 2 easy games. And then Memphis, Denver, Boston, Cleveland, Sacramento, New York, Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago. Portland has a tough road ahead of them, and they have 2 games to make up. And then at the same time, I believe the Kings have also one of the hardest schedules in the NBA.
They do.
Remaining as well. So Mavericks, Kings, Portland, and the Suns have a very rough road to go through, and they're all surrounding that 9, 10, 11, 12 seed. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on going forward.
For what it's worth, I think the way that the standings are set up now is the way that they will be going into the playoffs, including the swap the Mavericks and the Suns, and I think that's what we see in the play-in.
Yeah.
So 1 through 10, I think, is going to be what it is. So now it's just about who can the Suns beat in the play-in. I don't think Minnesota is that team for obvious reasons.
Nope.
But any of those other teams, even though they haven't won a game against the Kings, them without De'Aaron Fox is different than when they actually had him. So I think that changes the math a little bit with that matchup with them. But that remains to be seen because they have those 2 games against them. So Yeah, we'll see. But I think things are setting up for them to be included in that top 10.
Yeah.
I think it's as it has always been. The biggest obstacle for the Phoenix Suns to make the play-in is the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
They have a path, they have an opportunity, and they can do something if they do make it in the play-in, and they do win a couple of games, and they get into the first round. You're going to be playing OKC, which is going to be a tough challenge. But this is still a team that, in its construction, in its inception, Gerald, was built for the playoffs. And if you can get there and win the play-in, I have a feeling that even my emotional self might be like, hey, we might have a chance here, even though we probably don't.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. They're getting swept by OKC
OKC's
if that's
damn
the
good.
first round. Because we did say this about the Suns last year. We said, okay, they had some stuff to work through in the regular season, but this is a team that's built for the playoffs, and we know how that happened. So, and honestly, OKC this year is better than Minnesota was last year. So I wouldn't see them going anywhere in that matchup, but I would like to be proven wrong. I would like to give them the opportunity at least to put Kevin Durant, Devin Booker on a basketball court in a playoff setting against a younger OKC squad and at least see what happens. Because I can promise you we're going to be – that's nowhere – even if they get swept 4-0, that's at least way better than not even making the damn play-in. Like, that would be disastrous for me.
I think for everything that it would take for them to climb out of – not being in the play-in and then climb through the play-in tournament itself, they might be able to salvage a single win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I'm not putting money on that.
Yeah.
But I just think that they have game breakers. Oklahoma City is probably, for my money, the best defense in the league for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
However, they still also have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And I think that those are matchup problems.